Let's have a quick look at the Muslim beliefs regarding gene therapy and genetic engineering. A lot of this boils down to how Muslims perceive Allah and Allah's plan for the people. So Allah is the creator, the protector, the provider. Allah controls the birth and death of people and holds human life to be sacred and decrees that it should be protected. One of the main arguments for gene therapy and genetic engineering in Islam comes from when a fetus should be considered a person, and there are different schools of thought for this. Some Muslims believe that a person is a person from the moment of conception. Other Muslims believe that the soul enters the person at 42 days, 120 days, and there are arguments for other lengths of time as well. And of course, this will have implications on what can be done with that embryo fetus at that stage. Now, there is also a very long tradition of scientific and medical endeavor within Muslim culture. The hadith state that Allah has provided human beings with knowledge to develop treatments and medicines, and Muslims believe that Allah will judge humans after death. So everyone is responsible for their actions in this life, but if they follow the will of Allah, they will live a good life. Okay. So the Quran, the Hadith, and also Sharia law teach that human beings are responsible for protecting and caring for Allah's creation, responsible for protecting human life, and providing care for the sick and showing them compassion. That word compassion keeps coming up. Okay, Muslim arguments for and against gene therapy. So let's look at somatic cell therapy first. Arguments for could be that it provides care and relieves suffering. This is a good thing, of course. Many Muslims would argue that Allah gave human beings the knowledge and the skills to develop the treatments for the diseases and conditions that cause suffering. Arguments against are that some Muslims might suggest life is a test and suffering is a part of that test. They might refer to the Quran 2:153. Believers, fortify yourselves with patience and prayer. Allah is with those that are patient. What about Muslim points of view when it comes to germline therapy? Well, the arguments for are that we are developing treatments that would ensure future generations don't contract the same diseases. Again, this is a compassionate thing. It's a sign of truly following Islam to help the future generations. Muslims who believe that an embryo does not have a soul will be okay with the engineering of germline therapy. Arguments against could be that some Muslims would consider the unknown risks of germline therapy to be too great. We can't do this, it's too much of a risk, we don't know enough about it yet. And some may consider that the genetic makeup of each individual human being was ultimately designed by Allah, and playing with that is going against God's will. What about saviour siblings in Islam? Well, arguments for saviour siblings in Islam are that Muslims are taught to be kind and compassionate, like Allah himself and his Prophet Muhammad. Helping to save a life or relieve the suffering of a sibling is the ultimate compassion. Some might argue that the intention of a saviour sibling is a good one. Some would say that Allah has given us the knowledge to help people. Arguments against saviour siblings could be that Muslims believe that embryos destroyed during the process have a soul. And in Islam, all human life is created and protected by Allah. Creating a saviour sibling uses one child to cure a sick sibling rather than necessarily valuing the life of a child itself as a creation of Allah. Quick look at Islamic arguments for and against designer babies. An argument for could be that this use of technology that Allah gave us the intellect to create and use to prevent diseases is a very good thing. Muslims would argue against it for enhancement or gender selection or something like that, ultimately because that is in the control of Allah. And even though sons are prized in many Muslim societies, most Muslims would be opposed to gender selection. And it's because they believe that Islam emphasizes the equal value of both genders. Let's have a quick look at the arguments for and against embryology within Islam. Now, in 2003, the Muslim World League issued a statement that supported the use of spare embryos from IVF when they are used to help develop medicines and treatments. This is seen as a compassionate thing, of course. Muslims are taught that where the tradition doesn't contain specific guidance, they should do what is in the public interest, and finding disease cures is, of course, within the public interest. Arguments against embryology, though, could be for Muslims who believe that the soul enters the body at the moment of conception, then you will not play around with the embryos. And there is also concern that research could be pursued purely for selfish and financial reasons, which goes against the teachings of Islam.